Ready to rock? What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of On the House. I have a very good friend, mentor, one of the best coaches in the world, Jhon Crouch here. I just realized we've been working together for 11 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, Mike Delatorre. I don't know if you remember, I picked you up at the airport in San Jose. It was the first time we met.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Gosh, there's so many memories. They all kind of blend together.
Yeah.
I feel like I've just always known you.
Yeah.
To be honest, I don't remember a time when we weren't working together.
Well, remember DLT was in San Diego.
Yep.
And then he switched over to you guys. I remember being nervous because I'd seen your gym, and obviously, that's when Benson was on top of the world.
Yeah.
I was kind of intimidated at first, and I was like, oh no, hope this goes well.
Mike was great, man.
Yeah.
Like he's one of the ones I tell the story of all these guys that want to fight, but they don't want to put in the time.
Yeah.
Michael walked in, he had like 8 fights or something. He had fought professionally forever. And he's like, I go, hey, what are you doing? I was thinking about being on the fight team. Very polite, very soft-spoken. I'm like, well, man, you got to come to classes. Well, he's already got 7 or 8 fights.
Yeah.
And he didn't tell me. He just kept coming to classes, no problem.
So he's in general pop classes.
Yeah. And then one day I saw him, there's a 2-time state champion wrestler that was training jiu-jitsu. And Mike just whipped his ass all over. And I was looking at him like, what is going on? I said, have you fought before? Yeah, a little bit. What do you mean a little bit? 7-1 or whatever he was. Yeah. I was like, man, get in the other room. So anyway, Michael's one of my favorite dudes. That's funny.
I always feel like he was someone that got the most out of himself. I think at least I hope. I mean, I feel like he hangs his head at night knowing that he exasperated everything in the sport. And I felt like going to the lab was a real game changer for him because he beat some very good UFC fighters during his tenure with you.
Yes, he did. He did a great job, man. He fought a lot of people, and not the most athletic guy, and not making fun of him, but
that's a compliment. No, it's a
he's
compliment.
not a huge doesn't bring all these natural gifts. He just brought grit and toughness and an attitude like he was going to get it done. He's one of my favorite dudes of all time.
It always makes me happy when I see him. I think back on a lot of good memories, and I always give him credit. I was like, hey man, you're my Trojan horse into the lab. Like you got me and Crouch hanging out.
That's
and I was all excited.
I don't know how I don't remember that. I should.
Yeah.
Where did he fight? Where was the first fight I met you at?
In San Jose, when he fought Ortega, I believe it was.
Oh, okay.
Mike said, hey, my coach needs a ride at the airport. Can you get him? And I was like, yeah. I was like, which coach? And he was like, Crouch. And I was like, oh. And I remember being kind of like a little nervous, like okay,
That's funny.
I mean, because by then, Coach, how many countdowns had you been on? How many embedded like shows? So, I mean, me growing up in the sport, you're like, oh man, that's Benson Anderson's coach, and
turned out just to be another dummy.
Nah. I mean, you climbed the mountaintop at that, that's something I always dreamed of. So at that point, it was like, dude, he's done it.
That's cool.
He's won the big one,
Yeah, that's really cool.
And I'd been to your gym. I was helping Kirchhoff Zhang. The first Chinese fighter in the WC when you guys did the last WC event.
Yep.
I remember we went to your gym. You guys invited us to cut weight there. I don't remember if you were there, but I remember just being a little starstruck about. Like Dominic Cruz was cutting weight there. Benson was. Everyone. It was like Murders Row. Everything I'd grown up watching on Versus, and I was like, wow, this. And you've always had one of the top facilities. I know you've moved a couple times now, but every gym I think you've had has been one of the cleanest gyms I've seen.
Yeah, one of my good friends at the Gracie Academy started the gym. Mm-hmm. And I saw him and he's like, I opened a gym. And I'm like, why am I not teaching jiu-jitsu there?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, I didn't think you wanted to. I lived in Denver at the time. And I said, well, why wouldn't I? He's like, you should come down for the grand opening because, it was under Hoist and Alio. Mm-hmm. And they both came out. So he invited me. I dug it. He met Alvin Robinson, who was my first UFC fighter, but first guy that I ever trained for MMA. And he saw us train, and he was like, man, you got to do an MMA team. And I was like, I never did an MMA team. I don't even know what that looks like. He's like, come on down. And I did. And that was, almost 18 years ago.
Wow. Now, I wanted to ask you, and I told you this before, I've always been curious. So you're a band instructor in your 20s, right?
Yes, sir.
Your mom gets you
a Taekwondo membership
for Christmas because you always want to do martial arts. Taekwondo instructor starts learning jiu-jitsu, brings it back to you. You just up and pack and spend a summer in LA at the Gracie Academy in Torrance.
Yeah, the timing was just right. The first UFC was in Denver. Mm-hmm. I had no idea. And then when
So,
hoist.
so you didn't see that? You didn't?
I
Okay.
didn't see
Okay.
it, but I always just wanted to do it. And my mom bought my girlfriend and I a Christmas gift, so we started training Taekwondo. My instructor there was a sheriff, Arapahoe County Sheriff. So he went to the Gracie Academy for their grapple program, came back and started teaching some jiu-jitsu classes. And I thought it was awesome. These little guys were just killing me. And I was like, man, I got to learn this stuff. And just in time for Hoist to beat Dan Severn. And I decided I would go out for the summer. And
so when you start watching or start training in Taekwondo, then you've watched a little UFC at that point?
I had never seen it.
None. Okay.
No. As I started, probably maybe a year in, it's hard to tell timeline, but I bought he started teaching it. I brought the Gracie instructionals and the Gracie in action tapes. Have you ever seen those?
Yes, yes.
I love those. I would watch those every day. And that got me started and fell in love. And so I decided to go out and train with Hoist and Horian.
And spend the whole summer there.
Yeah. My brother was a Orange County sheriff at the time.
So you had somewhere to.
Well, he said he lived 15 minutes away. It was now.
Torrance is not 15 minutes away.
It was far.
Yeah.
And I drove up there in the morning, trained 2 classes, and drove home. Drive up at night, train 2 classes, and drive home. So it was a lot of driving, but it was, I applied for the instructor program there. At the time, they had an instructor's program, and they accepted me. So I came back the next summer for good.
So was that like that first summer? Was that the plan that you wanted to maybe try to make this career? Or you just were in love with it? Hey, I'm just going to spend the summer.
No, I just wanted to learn how to do it really, because my guy was an awesome guy, Phil Spence, one of the good guys in my life. Just a role model and tough guy, cool guy.
He changed the course of your life in
Dude,
some ways.
He was such a good guy, being a sheriff for so long. And he's a good one for sure. But he didn't really know how to do jiu-jitsu. He was just doing his best.
Like taking a few techniques and bringing it over, taking a few.
What he saw, he was impressed by. He'd been a lifelong martial artist. He was like, man, this stuff is great. So he started it, but he wasn't a jiu-jitsu instructor. And he encouraged me to go. So I went out there for the summer and just loved it. And so at the end of the summer, I applied for their program.
Wow. How hard was there that first week or two out there? I mean, how hard was training back then, or what was it like?
That was easy. I mean, the Grace has always been a little more technical than physical. And I was sort of more physical back then. I liked rough and tumble. So it was actually harder for me just to settle down and really do it, not try to knock the paint off the walls with some other idiot who didn't know what he was doing. So it wasn't hard physically, just as I moved up a little bit, got into the intermediate classes and trained more, I'd get a little more tired. But it's nothing like the MMA training you see today.
Yeah.
That would have been super shocking to my system to have to do that. We didn't wrestle much, and it wasn't really, Hoist, he won fights by wearing people out on the ground.
Exactly.
He'd just lay on his back and hug him up, and they'd make a mistake, and he'd win.
And you trained a lot with Hoist. I remember reading that even Helio as well. You got to spend quite a bit of time with.
Well, Hoist was just coming off of his UFC stuff and started fighting for Pride.
So he was at his peak.
Yeah, and I was there a lot, and got beat up a lot. Was one of his training partners and was up for it. I had boxed a little bit and done Taekwondo, so I got to try to punch him a few times. I was terrible, but it was fun.
Yeah.
And then Elio, the Grandmaster, moved out there, and he was there for a couple of years. Wow. That coincided with my time. So he taught the instructor's class twice a week. So I got hundreds of hours with Elio Gracie. I was really lucky, to be there at that time.
Yeah, it's a perfect time to be there.
Yeah, it was great. It was cool.
So you passed an instructor's course, then you go back to Denver, and then you're teaching there first?
Yeah, that's where, I was at the Gracie Academy maybe for a year or two. Horian was great with me, and it was easy for me. Some guys went there for a long time and never got certified.
Really?
And the whole time I was there, only 5 guys got certified. And
so you're one of 5.
Yeah. I mean, his sons, of course, now, and there's probably a bunch of people now, but at the time it was just
very rare.
Yeah. And so, but it was easy. Horian was cool. It wasn't hard for me to do the things he expected. Some people balked at the idea of cleaning toilets and mopping the floors. And I was like, hell yeah, give me the mop.
Yeah.
Actually, I volunteered for toilet duty. First Friday, it was every Friday morning. We'd walk in and, okay, who's going to do what? And nobody wanted to clean the toilets. And the first couple of weeks, I figured that out. And I'm like, give me the brush. I'll do all the toilets. Let's go. So I was the toilet guy for years at the Gracie Academy. And he loved that you were willing to put in the work. So after I was certified probably a year or two in,
Mm-hmm.
and then I taught some of the basics classes at the Gracie Academy.
So you taught there first a little bit just so they can kind of
Yes,
see
sir.
you, and then
And then I moved to Denver and opened up Mile High Gracie Jiu-Jitsu.
wow. And so you're doing that, and that's when your friend calls you to come to Phoenix.
Yeah, I'd been doing it, I guess, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. It was terrible. Like, we didn't do well. I didn't run the business well at all. I had some guys that are like, they're a bunch of black belts running around that have been training for 30 years now because of that place. But as far as a moneymaker, it was not. And so when I met Jason House, he's the guy, you're Jason House.
Yes.
When I met Jason Beck,
Yes.
he told me about his new place. I was ready to try it full time.
Wow.
Yeah.
So move off to Phoenix.
Yep.
Alvin Robinson.
Yeah. We started the fight team, and I just met Benson before that. He came in to train Leister Bowling. Do you remember Leister?
Yes.
Great coach, great guy. His son wrestles at Iowa now.
Yes.
Or he's going to Iowa. He just finished up his high school career. But Leister was such a cool, old school, tough guy. And he had wrestled with Alvin at Southern Colorado. And they disbanded the wrestling program. So he moved to Dana College in Blair, Nebraska, where, as luck would have it, Ben Henderson went to school. And so he wrestled with Benson, and Ben said he'd like to do MMA. Turns out he was a fan of Alvin's. He drove to see me for a few weekends. And then he was, then we were together since then.
Wow. So you guys almost kind of both started your MMA journey together in some aspects.
Yeah, probably a couple years apart.
Wow.
I mean, he was in college wrestling, I think,
Yeah.
at the same time. But, just luck, connections that are weird that they seem obvious in hindsight, but when they happen, it's like, oh, how did that happen?
Yeah.
So,
because I always felt like Phoenix wasn't a hub for MMA in the beginning. I feel like your gym was the first one to really draw a lot of people to that area. I mean, the lab. I mean, it got on the map, and people are coming from all walks. I mean,
well, the Phoenix area has, like, with Mark Kerr and who's the mustache guy, Don Fry.
Yes.
And then, CB Dalloway and Ryan Bader and Aaron Simpson and Jamie Varner, like all those Arizona combat guys, they had really established kind of a little foothold there before we got rolling.
But they were already there, though, I'm saying, right? Like, I feel like you were I've started like, like Mashad's from, so-and-so, yes. Benson from somewhere else, you got a good plug in Montana. All these places were coming. I remember thinking, like, man, how's Coach getting all these guys from all over?
As soon as, how it is, when somebody wins a championship, every sport's a copycat sport. Somebody does really well, you're like, oh, how they do it. And so guys moved to our place to try to get the magic formula that Benson had.
And how did you manage that? Because one thing I've always loved about your gym is, like, for example, on a Mario Batista fight week, Yadi Mays is there every time. Selfless. I see him taking punches from Mario, and then you can go to another fighter's fight week, and it's like everyone's always helping the other person get better, right? I feel it's such a selfless community there. Yeah. And I know it's hard when you're, you taught me this, mixing the red paint with the blue paint, and all these guys are coming from different walks, how you get them to fit in right away. Because, I mean, like I said, not a lot of guys, I guess I'm trying to say that not a lot of fighters were from Phoenix at one point in time, or born and raised Phoenix.
Yeah. Well, like Michael De La Torre, right, from San Diego.
Exactly.
And now he teaches at the lab. You know? I think it really takes a special person. Like, you have to believe in the culture. Not every gym is for every fighter. You go to gym X and it's like, oh, this isn't right for me. But the next guy that goes there is like, this is the perfect place for me. So I think I really talk about culture a lot. I talk about family a lot. About being there for your teammates, like, if you're going to drink the water, you gotta help get the water, you know? And so
I like that. You're going to drink the water, you have to help get
right?
the water.
If you're going to eat dinner, you better hunt.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. Or you got to pull weeds, or you got to do something, wash the dishes. Like, you have to provide for your community to be part of the community. And the guys that stayed always believed in that. David Mashad's
I love him.
Perfect example of that. Like, he was there, hook, line, and sinker for everybody, and still now
and he doesn't fly. So I know he's driven some far places to corner teammates, and that's a big commitment. I think he came quite a bit for Mario too.
Yeah,
traveled.
He drove from South Dakota.
Yeah, and again, that's a testament to what you've built there. I always wondered, like, man, how is he able to do this when there's a guy coming from South Dakota, North Dakota, Montana, Colorado, all these different walks, and they come in and they just buy in.
I think they want that. Like, I don't know. You played baseball, right?
Yeah,
At a
yeah,
high level. And I think we as men miss that
yeah,
camaraderie of a team, of a community. I feel like I did. And so I always want to just create that. I want us to be there for each other. I want to bleed when we lose, and I want to cry tears of happiness when we win.
yeah,
And if you're not feeling that for your teammates, you're doing it wrong, in my opinion.
yeah.
Obviously, different places do it different ways. So, no shade to that. But if I did it any different way, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, no, I've always really enjoyed the energy when I come into the gym. And one, I think again, I said it earlier and I'll say it again. I always felt like your guys' gym just, man, it looks like a college program when you walk in there. Like just the logos on the walls,
Oh,
the photos,
thanks.
like it just looks, you know what I mean? Like you're walking into like a D1 collegiate locker room. Like you walk in, you're like, man, this is a great facility. Like, wow, like you get excited to train there. You're like, man, everything's same colors. It's a good concept.
Yeah,
Everyone's wearing the team shirt. Just like I don't know. I know it sounds silly, but I feel like all those things add up and make the team what the team is. Right, just the culture,
I
the
agree.
energy,
Yeah.
and I've always been so impressed because some gyms like from the California, all those kids are California kids, right? So they kind of grew up together in the same neck. So I think it's a little easier transition. I think when you're taking all walks off, it's kind of like a college program, right? You're recruiting one kid from Texas, you're recruiting one kid from Georgia, one from California, and you got to get these guys that never play together to play together. And one, it's even harder doing a team sport, but two, I don't know you see this, but some people make this to be an individual sport. I don't think it is. I think it's too hard to do alone, but
Yeah.
that's just my opinion.
I mean, you compete alone, but you need people around you
Yeah.
to make you your best.
When did you feel like when you start coaching MMA, right? You have a couple guys. Benson's an amateur, right? Alvin's in the UFC. When did you start thinking like, okay, this is really taking off. Like this is going to be it. Like this, I'm really going to go all in on Phoenix and the lab. And
I was in when I moved
Mhm.
there, even if it was just jujitsu.
Okay, then for MMA, then when was it like, oh, like this may be my calling?
Well, I never felt like that. I still don't. I think everything you do in life, you just do your best. And it's turned into so much fun for me. And I've
Mhm.
met so many great human beings in that thing. So there was never a moment. There were some panic moments where I didn't think I knew what was going on, and I didn't want to fall short as a coach, as
Mhm.
a human being there. But I never felt like, oh, now I'm going to do it, because I was already doing it.
Mhm.
And even when I was bad at it, didn't know what I was doing, that might have been yesterday, but even when I was young and making a lot of mistakes, I didn't think about it like that. I was just going to do my best. And so I'd find the information that I needed and try again, and all that just kept building, and all of a sudden we were just where we were. So, you have moments where you look out and you go, "Oh, this is good. We're doing good." But for me, that moment is followed quickly by the what comes next.
Yeah.
It's more the fear that you won't produce again. Fear is maybe the wrong word, but I like that pressure of like, hey, you should do it again now. Like
Yeah.
that was once. Now what you got?
Can you repeat it?
Yeah. Like I'm mad we don't have another belt. I want all the belts. So my goal is to have more champions and keep building champions, not just in the ring, but outside, like good humans, and just keep enjoying the ride. So, in answering your question, I never really felt like there was a aha moment for me.
Mhm.
It just was. It just kept going, kept rolling.
Yeah, no, it's impressive, and I mean, I definitely think you've built. I mean, all the guys on the team are really good people. Those are people you want to have a beer with outside of the gym. And again, I think that's a testament to you, and I think it's also a testament. Like a lot of the guys that you have highly ranked right now are guys that came and went from amateur to pro. Like you kind of really built the system. There is impressive. Mario Batista, Marcus McGee, all these guys came and Kyler Phillips. I mean, you'd have been working on him since he was an amateur,
Yeah.
and it's been so impressive to see just how you keep turning it turnkey these athletes over and over. Marcus maybe started a little older. Kyler was young, right? Mario, they're all walks of life, all different backgrounds. But I feel like if they go through the lab program, they're going to be tough.
I feel like that too. I mean, I don't know. We have a lot of people that have been built from zero or close to 0
Mhm.
and come all the way up. Chris Gritzmacher was in the
Yes.
UFC, and he was Ben's main training partner for years. And he was but he was a high school wrestler
Yeah.
and had never done any striking, never done anything. And he was an incredibly good martial artist. And so I feel like that's been our sort of MO from the beginning. Like we take people and we can develop them up to a high level. And it's been super fun. I love that process. I love to think back, you know, how we all do.
Yeah.
You know, you have your nephew now, right? Like
Yes.
you're wrestling, and you're going to be pretty soon tomorrow, he'll be wrestling for a state championship as a high school senior. And you're going to remember practice yesterday, you know, where his shoes were on backwards, right? So I love that process, building and learning and growing together.
And I was going to say, one thing I love about you is like I don't know why I brought this to the day, but I was thinking like some of my best memories with you aren't UFC events actually. Like, do you remember that like all black tie affair we went to with Mario Batista? Like, took it on short notice, and then
he fought up a weight division.
But I remember thinking like, dude, Coach has probably got 20 UFC fighters right now, and he's driving to California. I think it was like Mario's second or third fight. Same for Kyler Phillips. Like you'd come to California, and I'm like, Coach really enjoys developing young talent, because not a lot of coaches are going out of state for those are, you know, smaller regional shows at that time, you know?
Yeah.
And I always really respected that about you. And I felt like, man, it must feel good that, you know, if I'm Mario and it's my second pro fight and I just saw Coach Crouch in the corner on Fox or ESPN weekend before, but now he's here with me, like, you know, does add a little much, you know what I mean? You're like, man, I got the head honcho here. I got the guy here with me. And I just think that's really cool.
It is, but it never was a question.
Yeah.
I feel like it should be that. And of course you can't. Some guys are so busy.
Yeah.
How are you going to make all those fights? But if they want me there, I want to be there.
Yeah.
And
I know. I've seen you. I've seen you fight tooth and nail with me. Like, Jay, Bellator's on this night. I could see like it really kills you to have two guys fighting at two different locations.
You know what? One night I don't remember, a week or two, they scheduled Benson and Bulldog on the same night. I was like, I'm just going to go away. I can't do it. It will break my heart either way, you know?
Yeah.
And so I would really like to be there for the people that want me to be there. And you know, I think it's important. It shows an investment in them, that you believe and you care. Win or lose, I'm going to be there standing by you.
Yeah.
Know?
I mean, I remember that fight, Kyler and LFA. We ran into some adversity early in that first round. I'll never forget, you took over and really turned the tide there and got Kyler listening. And I remember thinking like, damn, thank God Coach Crouch is here. That one got ugly quick in that first. I was like, what is going on?
That happens.
And Kyler dug deep and, you know, did what Kyler does. But I was like, man, thank God I had a coach to kind of talk him through everything and walk him through the whole scenario.
Well, you know, sometimes as a coach, you feel like you really nailed it. But there's just as many times when you're like, oh, man, I could have done better than that. I say that all the time, you know, with Rogan saying stuff, and he's got such a huge audience.
Yeah.
Like when Benson was the champ, he said like a few times, one of the best coaches in MMA. And of course, like it feels good, but you know, whatever. My guys are either going to win or lose. Am I effective for them? I try to just keep it to that. But my friends and family, they're like, did you hear that? But when I coached Efren Escudero, he fought Charles Oliveira early, and he didn't do a thing. He just stood there and stared at Charles for like 2.5 rounds before we lost, right? So at the end of the second round, they were in our corner, and Effie hadn't done anything. And I go, Effie, like, why don't we just punch him or kick him or wrestle him or something? Like, let's do something. And Rogan goes, well, that's not very good corner advice. You know, you want to be more detailed.
Yeah.
So in my thought process is it didn't matter to me when he said that, because he didn't really understand our relationship.
Yeah.
It didn't matter to me, the other one either. I appreciated it, but like it's all between you and your fighter. Yeah. That's it.
And speaking on that, this may be selfish for me that I deal with the same fighters with you. And one thing I've always tried to learn from you, like I notice how different you talk to each athlete. Like how you talk to Mario is not how you talk to Kyler, and then separate from Marcus, right? And I'm just curious, was that something that you had got through your teaching days, or something you picked up along in the fighting days? Something I really like, even your tone sometimes in the corner, like I can see that like you're changing it. You know, some guys I see you kind of get a little more animated, right? Trying to put a little spark in them, and some are kind of, you're very like, okay, I don't have to get real loud with this guy, right? I can just kind of talk to him and you were having a conversation. Like you just said with Effie, right? Like you knew your relationship with Effie. I know you guys always had a good working relationship. Awesome. Like you were just saying, man, come on, we got to do something. Like you knew how to talk, speak his language. He knew what you were trying to say. Like, hey man, we got to go. Like you can't.
Well, I think that's super important as a coach. Like even if you're in a team game, Like imagine some of your coaches.
Yeah.
And if they treated everybody the same, how does that go? You know, like I never had to say anything to Benson, like literally one word or a look, and he would get it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some people you got to try to jump on to wake them up. And
Yeah.
your ultimate measure as a coach is, are you being effective? Is your athlete able to do the things that they've trained to do in the moments that they're trained to do them? And if not, then you have to find a different way to get that out of them. And if you're not, then you're not a good coach. Like you're not doing it.
Yeah.
You know, you can say all the smart things you want. You can be super intelligent and say all these cool things in the corner. Did your athlete do those things? Because that's the measure of a good coach.
If you can execute.
Yeah. Did you change it? Because there's only a couple fights I really feel like I made this difference, you know? And I remember him, Mitch Clark is from Canada. He fought Al Iaquinta. And Al just threw us around the ring like we were a mouse and he was a cat in the first round. It was brutal. It was terrible. Not one thing went right. Like I'm surprised we survived the round. And I go into the ring and I'm thinking, I have to get him settled down because he is wide-eyed and puffing and like he's looking at me like, oh my God, what's going on? And I remember watching John Elway's highlight. And when he was playing the Cleveland Browns and they had that 97-yard drive or something to win the game. And he leans down in the huddle. He goes, boys, we got him right where we want him. And all the players on that team remember that.
Yes.
They're like, man, I just laughed and it settled me down and we did our thing. And I leaned into Mitch and I go, hey, and I looked like to be funny. I go, we got this motherfucker right where we want him. And he looked at me and goes, what? And I laughed and I go, the round's over, man. Let's just start round 2 fresh. And he laughed and he relaxed and he ended up catching him in a Darce choke and finishing him.
I remember that, yes.
And he got the bonus that night. So that's like I feel like that's one of the only ones that I've really been as effective as I could be.
I've always felt, I mean, you know, there's coaches that are yellers, there's coaches that are more technical. We've seen all different styles here. But I've always resonated with you because I just feel like you're always so like good energy backstage. Yeah. You know, when I'm there with you, you always make me feel better about the whole thing. Like I'm always super nervous. I'm like, oh man, well, coaches, you know, pumped up and have fight. I remember Benson's last fight in Korea.
Yeah.
And we had DLT, Benson. I don't know if you remember that locker room, Coach.
I don't, but it was a great trip.
I just want you to know, on my deathbed, I will giggle about how smooth that locker room was. I'm telling you, no, it's one of my favorite locker rooms ever. You probably never would have guessed I would say that night. But I remember just thinking like, dude, we got all the lab juice in here. Like we were just rocking on all fronts, fun. Right? Like DLT wins, you know what I mean? And Benson comes and closes the show. I remember thinking like, and you were just leading everyone, you're bouncing both. I was like, man, this is like a perfect night. Like we
had such great people there working with us.
The Mazer brothers were there, right? We had the music on. I remember just thinking like, wow, like this is, you know, I have a picture of my house. You know, I know the suit I wore that night. I was like, man, this is a good mojo for us.
That's one of my favorite pictures. Because Michael winning, how cool was that? And then Benson moving up to 70 and beating Masvidal as in the main event in Korea when his mom and his aunt and some of his Korean relatives were there. That was really, really cool.
And I remember it just was like, again, going back to like DLT's journey, like that guy wasn't supposed to be there. And I say that as the hugest compliment to Mike, and I hope he takes it like that. And I've told him this before, like, brother, like you outkicked your coverage so far in this career, but he's in Korea. He's probably not brought in to win, right? I mean, it's a tough fight, you know. He gets the win, and then we go and see Benson right off to the sunset of one of the best, UFC careers ever. Yeah. You know, before he made his way into Bellator, it just was amazing. You know?
Yeah, that's cool. I'm glad you remembered that because that's a fun trip.
It was so much fun. I remember thinking like, man, this is a great trip.
One of my best memories of that trip was over Thanksgiving. I don't know if you remember.
Yes, yeah, I do.
Other than they had the best breakfast buffet of all time in Korea.
Yes.
They had those breakfast steaks.
Yes.
All the fighters would just be waiting for that tray of steaks to come out. But we went somewhere. We did some press or maybe it was a pre-weigh-in thing. And we were at a mall or something. And the reporter's walking around asking all the fighters, do you miss your family at Thanksgiving? Blah, blah, blah. And she walked up to Yao-Tseen Meza. She goes, hey, it's Thanksgiving. How come, you're sad you're not spending it with my family? He goes, I am with my family.
Ah, yes.
Oh, God, I got a tear in my eye. I had to go to the bathroom. I got to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Just wipe my eyes. I loved it that he said that. And he meant it. And that's what I remember from Korea.
Yeah.
That's what that picture brings back for me.
But that's the energy that trip had.
Yeah.
And like, so that was only a year into our relationship. It was like the first time, like I remember DLT told me to bring my gi. You may not remember this, but like you kind of gave like a gi class on the mats. And I remember just being like, and you were like, hey, Jay, you're doing pretty good. You know what I mean? You were like, you're gassing me up a little bit. I think I was like a pro belt back then, whatever. But I remember just thinking like, I'm on the mat with all these lab guys cutting weight and we're doing gi jiu-jitsu, which I thought was so cool that the lab guys always brought their gi on fight week. Like no one did that, right? It was like your guys' thing to kind of have like this.
It was Benson's thing.
Yes.
He loved it because it made him sweat and he wanted to compete.
Yes.
He hated the idea of just cutting weight.
Yeah.
So he'd set up matches and there'd be scores. Like we'd keep score.
Yeah.
And if he lost, he'd do another round.
And I remember just thinking like, wow, I guess like, it was like getting invited to this fraternity of like, I had my Shoiroki on. I was all excited.
You always have the best gigs.
I was like so happy. And I remember going home like, and to your point, I was bummed missing Thanksgiving. So I was kind of going in, I guess what I should have prefaced it. I was going into that trip a little negative Nancy, like, oh man, I'm being in Korea for the holiday. You know what I mean? And it turned out being like one of my favorite trips ever. We had so much fun. I mean, and Yachty, I freaking love him, man. I cannot he is the definition of a fighter, of a teammate. Like every time I see him, like, dude, he's so selfless. I watch him with the son Adrian now. They were here a few weeks back and Iowa State did a practice here. And I was like, man, he's just all in for everyone. Yeah. He's so selfless and
always. He's been there for Ben the whole time. I mean, I say all the time, if it wasn't for the Meza brothers, we wouldn't. Yeah. I don't know where we'd be. But it was Benson, Chris Gritzmacher, and Charlie Brown were training together. And it was literally the four of us for a while. Well, they were so sick of each other on sparring days. They'd just walk in the room.
Monotonous, yeah.
Just looking at I'm going to kill you today, And then Victor Meza came over and started training and started doing well, got better, and he would go back to Southwest MMA, Drew Fickett's gym. Mm-hmm. And he was doing some things to guys that he hadn't done before. Yachty noticed, and Yachty came over. And then Yachty and Vic showed Efren, and then Efren came over and things really took off. But without the Meza brothers, I owe them a lot. Our team owes them a lot.
It's funny you said because I met Vic Meza at the DLT. And if you remember when DLT had that great knockout in Brazil in February of that year.
He was there.
And Vic really made me feel at home with you guys. Like I was always kind of nervous. Like I didn't want to overstep my boundaries. You know what I mean? He'd be like, oh, come on the mats, come train, come. Yeah. And he was so amazing. And then I got to meet Yachty, and they both just made me feel like right at home with the guys. And man, that trip to Korea was always brings a smile to my face. Like
I'm glad you brought it up. That's awesome.
Oh man, the locker room. It was like we were lights out. Like a perfect locker room, perfect energy, perfect work. Everything was just like I wasn't even nervous. Like, oh, we're gonna win for sure. Like
I wish I felt like that too.
All the good energy was going our way. You know what I mean? I could just tell all the guys were laughing and like just the flow. Like you know what I mean? Like there was no even questions. It was like Yachty knew how much Ben wanted. Everyone knew like it was like a band that was just playing their 100th show together. It was just so smooth. Everything was like.
That's a good analogy because we were like we'd been doing it together.
Yeah, no, you know what I mean. And I was young in my UFC career. I don't get to see things like that. So when I saw, I was like, wow, these guys are a well-oiled machine. Like they just, you know what I mean? Like you were handing a glove, they already knew to show. I mean, it was just, I was like, man, this is, it was super cool. And I remember, I got to Benton asked to roll with me a little bit, and I was like, oh man, he's gonna roll. But he wanted me to go hard, and I was so scared, like maybe do something dumb, and what I mean? Yeah. So I was like. And he's like, you can go. And I was like, dude, you're the main event, dude. I'll never forgive myself. You were my favorite fighter.
If I have to talk to Sean and tell him that I elbowed you in the nose, and that's why you're not in it.
I may never come home.
That's it.
But yeah, I just always look back on a lot of, I guess because when I met you and started working in the lab, it was very early, like in my UFC career. When I started getting guys in the UFC, and you guys taught me a lot. Like I really learned so much early on. In those early days,
awesome.
when DLT got into the San Jose, I mean, it was the first fight was Canada, remember? Then it was San Jose, I think was the second one. Like all of those things were very first experience to me really understanding how the ebb and flow of how teams work, how your dynamic works.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I mean, all the respect in the world to Ortega, and I think he's had a phenomenal career. But I always look back like, man, if he didn't test positive. I don't know if all this that we just talked about would have happened, right? Because that would mean DLT was 0-2. He tests positive. You can't cut a guy that had a no contest, right?
Yeah.
He gets the shot in Brazil. We win that, which leads to
Yep.
Korea, where we go. You know what I mean? Like it all unfolded, all those great memories, and I'm like thinking, man, like we got saved by the.
It's weird by how the thread connects.
Yeah,
You know,
because if he loses, I mean, let's be honest. If he loses, you know, I hadn't started working with Kyler yet. I think who was the next guy at the lab that I started working with. Mario was 2016, so I don't know if I
probably was Kyler, right?
Yeah,
Because he was from your neck of the woods down
yes,
there
but even then, I didn't meet him till I didn't really meet him till like Korea time. So if none of this would have happened, I don't know if my relationship with you would be where I always think back. I know it sounds, you know, a little weird, but I'm like, man, a lot of things change the course of.
The connections are weird in our lives,
Yeah.
right? In all aspects, but it's great. It's supposed to be like this.
Yeah.
It's supposed to have worked out.
Because I mean, we met that one against San Jose. If he loses, he gets cut. I don't have anyone else in the gym. I don't know if we really, you know, I mean, I'm sure I'll see you or something, but like.
Yeah. It definitely looks different today than it does.
You know, then I meet Kyler and then, you know, finds out he's at the lab and it just all unfolds and we start going to all of Kyler's fights. And those are good times for you and I. We're going to all those LA shows and stuff.
Yep.
And it all kind of, you know, sprung up from there.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So what's this year look like for you guys? Like what are goals that you have right now? I know you expanded the gym, beautiful second facility you have there. It's across the street, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
In the parking lot.
In the parking lot, yeah.
100
Sorry.
away.
Same part.
Yeah, I mean, it's across the street. That's all I say all the time. Yeah, we just opened it up. We needed we're trying to grow the student base and we're kind of full. So the fight team uses it a lot, but it's an extra classroom. I wish it was connected, but they didn't have room connected. So it's gone great. It looks beautiful. We got lots of youngsters coming up.
Yeah.
You know, Ang, Leslie, trying to get those guys back on the Contender Series. Alec Lorenz, I think, is going to be on the Contender Series this year. A bunch of youngsters coming up. We just got Eric McConico into the UFC, which is awesome. Can't wait to see him do his thing next week. A really good guy. 5 kids, worked super hard his whole life, came out, his career was kind of in shambles. And through hard work and his diligence, he was able to turn that around. And now he's going to be fighting the UFC next week.
I always look at him and Marcus as 2 guys that bought into your system kind of late in the game.
Yeah.
You know, and I said again as a compliment, you know, that they really stayed true to it and really flourished under your system. Yeah. Like that's so impressive. And I guess to a lot of people it may not understand when they see that card next week, but to you and I will know like what
that's going to be special.
You know, to see him. Like I told him too. I got emotional teary-eyed when I was talking to him yesterday. I was like, dude, I know what you've gone through, and I just want to say thank you for staying faithful to Crouch and I. I know this times are dark, but man, seeing you make that walk next week, it might be a little dusty in the room for me.
Yeah, I'm going to be excited, and I think he's going to fight his tail off and do. You know, he's going to do the best he can for sure. And so I can't wait. What a cool thing. Yeah. You know, your dream seems gone.
Yeah.
You know, you got all these kids and trying to make ends meet and life work. And now this, man, it's a fairy tale.
Yeah.
You know?
And going back to expand the gym, like who is it you that designs those gyms? Like they're always so nice. Like, I mean, it's just
the first one was Jason Beck.
Okay.
He designed all that. So everything from there was kind of, I stole from him, I guess. You know, we still use the logo's a little different. It's my triangle instead of the Hoist Gracie triangle now. But I stayed with the original color scheme.
Yeah, I love it.
And I just try to work. But you know, all the inside the NFLs and the coaching shows behind the scenes, I am always looking at the design behind.
I'm going to say, because you guys look like a legit, like it looks like a pro, you know what I mean? Like it's like Alabama football. Like it's so clean when you walk in there, and your guys always have great like clothing drops. I'm always like, oh man, that's clean. Like,
it's important to me. I know it probably doesn't matter.
It does. Like I always tell the guys, like I'm like, when we release like dark side shirts, I'm like, guys, we gotta be at the lab. Like you walk into the lab, like you feel like you just signed for a scholarship to go train at the lab, you know, like the room's all nice, the locker room's all spiffed out. I mean, your guys' pro room, like dude, it's motivating. You see all the UFC posters on the wall and everything. Yeah. Like, I don't know. It just has like a real, maybe because I'm a college athlete and, you know, I always aspire to play pro sports. So I watch all the same stuff you do, but every time I walk in there, I'm like, dude, this is like a well-oiled machine. You just feel like,
that's what we're trying to do.
Like these guys got their shit together, you know? And like, and I see like your jiu-jitsu classes all packed out. Everyone's all like, you know, I'm like, man, they got it going on, you know? Like
we're trying. I mean, the idea is to be the best in the world, you know, or the best we can be, I guess. And so I'm always trying to what's the next thing? You know,
Yeah.
how can we get better? What will help us be the best in the world?
Yeah.
And so look good, feel good, do good.
No,
You know?
you're spot on. Like I always say, like, man, I always think the lab's like the nicest. I mean, it just looks clean. And the clothing drops. I'm always like, man, you know, like the jersey. I think it was the jerseys you guys just popped out. I was like, well done, coach. Like, who's
I gotta say that's the best one we have.
Yeah,
so far.
I saw that drop all the photos. I'm like, dang, these guys are taking team photos.
Sick.
I'm like, yeah, I don't know. It just again, it sounds trivial, but I don't think it is at all. I think it's like part of building camaraderie. It's part of feeling something. You're putting on a jersey. You're being part of a team. Like it just makes you feel like you're a part of something bigger than yourself.
It's another element to it, right?
Yeah.
Like obviously there has to be commitment first, and then there has to be knowledge.
Yeah.
Next, and then you put those two things together, and you want to feel good about it. So it's superficial, but it's not. You're right. Like it matters.
No, it does.
Instills a sense of
even
pride.
when you guys do this after the fights, I bet like if I was an amateur, I'm looking forward to when I win a fight and I can go throw it up. You know what I mean? In my head, I'm like, man, they just got it going on.
It always surprises me when people do it because it was Benson that did it first.
Yeah.
And he took it from some artist. I don't remember who it was. He would remember. And he made these lanyards to go on our bags.
Mm-hmm.
And he put his hands and a light that shone out from the hands. So he put the guy's name on it and that symbol.
Cool.
And it was when we had like 5 people on the team.
Yeah.
And so he's done it ever since. And it's pretty like I love fights when people flash it up. It makes my heart happy.
I always what's that say? Like imitation's the highest form of flattery.
Yeah.
Like I always try to like see things you guys like, oh, we could do it at the agency. Like, you know, you guys did the Hall of Fame, and I was like, maybe we should do a Hall of Fame. Like that's really cool to honor the OGs, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And give credit to maybe those people that were the early pillars of your team, you know? And I think that's so awesome that you guys do that. I know we've been talking about it, you know. DLT probably has to be in that.
He is now.
You know? I'm saying for ours, I'm saying, for ours, I'm saying like he was such a, you know, I was trying to tell him like, hey man, it may not mean much, but like I really mean it. Like you were a big part of me growing my business.
We put him up there because we needed somebody ugly. So we put DLT up there because all the other guys were pretty good looking. So we had to drop the bar down a little bit.
I don't know. Vic Mays is kind of ugly.
Oh, dude, Victor Mays, I'm going to tell him. He's going to be sad.
Yeah, no. Man, Coach, I really appreciate having you on. I always finish with 3 questions. What would you tell your 18-year-old self?
Stop it. Do better. I was such an irresponsible. All the kids that I don't like are the ones that don't show up and make excuses. And that was me.
At 18, wow.
Yeah. Okay. And I just, I didn't live in my home. My dad had some alcohol problems and I was kicked out when I was 15. So a lot of people took care of me. I never wanted for anything. I had some really kind, really good people help me. And I was such a dipshit. It was just crazy. And I really don't feel like I started turning into a man till I was 30.
Wow.
And so when I see people that are young and got it together, it's really impressive to me. So I would say, pay attention, straighten up.
Yeah.
You know, I'd like to be a little more positive, but since it's me, I'd be irritated. Like,
I think that shows that makes sense for all that. I see what empathy you have for athletes. I've seen what empathy you've had in bringing athletes back to the team. That explains a lot to me because I've always admired you. And I've told you that before. You know, when certain guys come back, I'm like, man, Coach, you're a good dude. You know,
people make mistakes.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't want to let my ego be the deciding factor.
Yeah.
You should do what's right. Let's just put your ego in the back seat for a minute. And what's the right thing to do as a human, as a coach, as a person, brother, whatever.
Yeah.
And so thank you. I try to do that. I'm not always successful.
No, I've learned from it. We've taken people back to the agency, and I kind of followed your lead on that. Like, it's not about me, my ego.
Yeah.
You know, I hope if I made a mistake, someone would give me the same empathy that, you know, they're asking for now.
Well, because we all do.
Yeah.
And we're all going to. Big, little. And we deserve a second chance too.
Yeah. Billboard, any quote, what would you put?
Excellence is not an act, it's a habit.
Love it.
That's my favorite one.
Love it.
You know, a close second, we say Ubuntu around our place.
Oh.
And I love that.
I love that series, that show.
Yeah.
I love
Doc
it.
Rivers talked about it.
Yes.
And when I heard him say that, I got chills and I started studying it and reading about it. And It's an African idea that we're all interconnected. We are all responsible
Yes.
for each other. And in a team sport, and we take care of each other. Like it's on our shirts. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yep.
But it means I am because we are. That's a very bare bones. It's much deeper than that.
Yeah.
But the
That's
interpretation
that's the
is
gist of it. Yeah.
that's how I like that for us.
Yeah.
So excellence is not an act; it's a habit, and Ubuntu would be number 2.
I think it's like a little docu-series that I did on Doc Rivers for that. But I took something from that I literally live by every day. But like he was saying in there, how players will let him down, right? The other coaches were telling him like, don't get attached to your guys. They're going to want to be traded, or they want to be released, or they're going to cause problems with you, or complain about money, or whatnot, whatever, right?
Yes, sir.
And he's just said, nah, that's not how I'm going to do it. Whether someone's with me for 2 weeks, 2 years, or 20 years, I'm going to love them to the best of my ability. They're going to get my best. And whatever happens, at least I know in my heart of hearts that while they're part of my life, they got my best.
That's so important.
And I've adopted this.
Yeah, you can only do your best.
Yes.
I'm going to do my best, and then you're going to do whatever you do.
Yeah.
And I'll be okay with that because I'll know I did my best.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I think it's what we all should live by.
Like when I first time I watched that, it hit me like so hard. And I was like, wow, that's simple. I'm going to keep the main thing and just follow this lead. Doc Rivers, if you're listening, you really changed. Like that was like divine. I was like, wow, okay, well that can sum up my job or what I'm supposed to be doing here.
Yeah.
So
do your best.
Yep.
That's it. I love that too.
Yeah.
Doc's been a long time coaching, and in that sport, there's not a lot of loyalty.
No.
I mean, in all sports, people need to do what's best for them. They're going to move on. People are going to get hurt feelings, but he's been on a lot of teams. He's played for a lot of teams. He's coached a lot of teams. So he knows what he's talking about there, and some high stakes,
very high stakes
moments.
Yep.
And for him to be able to say that, I think is a role model for all of us that are in that kind of position.
100%. Last question. One song, rest of your life. What are you going with?
Somewhere Over the Rainbow by Israel Alphabet Soup. I don't know how to say his last name.
No, great choice. Great choice.
When my babies were little, we used to play it all the time. So that brings me to a place of happiness and peace.
That's awesome. I'll never forget Brandon Moreno's first title fight. Figgy during COVID, he was singing that, and before the fight, I remember thinking like, dude, what's this dude singing this song? And he was like, oh man, you ever seen that Adam Sandler, that 51st Dates? He's like, oh, I love that Adam Sandler. And I'm like, bro, you're about to fight Davison Figueiredo. He is a monster, okay? Like, but he was just so like present.
But how cool is that? Because that's what, everybody needs what they need.
Yeah.
Some people need louder music. Some people need to feel a different way. And music's so primal for humans.
Yeah.
It makes us war drums and dance music. It goes back to when we were dancing around fires,
Yeah.
And so whatever puts you in the frame of mind, I think is important. Like BJ Penn used to walk out to a Hawaiian music really slow.
Hawaii 78,
and he was a killer.
And the place would go nuts.
And he was in his place that he needed to be. So I feel that. That's pretty cool that he was singing that.
Yeah, I'll never forget it. I was like, man, this guy's cucumber cool. I'm over here sweating through my suit, nervous, and Brandon's over here just like,
And how good is that? And you have to be there for peak performance, to be in the zone. Yeah. You have to be relaxed, and you have to be in touch with what you're feeling and ready to move on to the next thing immediately. So I like that. I've always been a Brandon fan. Now I'm a little bigger Brandon fan.
Yeah, no, it changed me. It literally was like, wow, he's present. He is here in the moment. He is enjoying it. Like
awesome.
I need to be the same.
Yeah, all of us.
Well, thank you, Coach. I appreciate you. You're the man. Guys, catch this episode on Spotify or YouTube. Thanks for tuning in again, and see you next week.
I go okay?
Yeah, no, Coach, you're amazing.